Hey, what's up? This is Jordan Harris, the Mediocre Millionaire. So today's topic is a question that a lot of entrepreneurs ask. I asked myself quite a bit when I was coming up, just getting started and everything. And that question is, when is the right time to actually give in and start buying yourself some nice things as a reward for all the hard work that you've put in? When do you give in and start to reward yourself for all of the work that you've put in and the results that you've gotten? Stay tuned, we'll get right into it.
What I want out here, yeah.
Okay, so the first thing to understand is it is not the right time to buy fancy things as soon as you get yourself a raise at work. So many people think that getting a raise at work means buying a new car, or getting a raise of $10,000 at their job means it's time to finally buy that new house. That's not the mindset that you should have if you're trying to get ahead of the game financially. There's a saying that says, it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. So the best way to explain it is by saying, if you make $1 million this year, but you spend $999,000 of those dollars, then that spot in between is not much. So I always tell people the most important part of your finances is that part in between. And what I mean by that is, again, we'll use the same type of example. If you make $1 million and you only spent $500,000, then you're going to be living pretty good. But if you move it all the way back up to $999,000, then you're not going to be doing all right at all. You'll probably go bankrupt and have some serious issues because of your spending habits. So the best way to change or to grow that middle part, most of the time, it's by taking care of your expenses, reducing your expenses as much as possible. That is how you increase the middle part. So my advice is, if you have a pay raise at work, or if you own a company, you just get a brand new account that's paying quite a bit, my advice is to continue using the same lifestyle and living that same lifestyle for about 6 months. So if you're making $50,000 in your job and you get a raise of $100,000, continue living in the same home that you've been living in for 6 months. Continue driving that same car that you've been driving for another 6 months. Continue doing all the same things that you had been doing on that old salary. Continue doing it with your new salary. And with the excess money, just put it in a savings account. If you continue to do that, if you use discipline and continue doing that over 6 months, a lot of those things that you have been wanting to buy yourself, you'll notice that you can buy those things pretty easily. So when it does come to finally splurging and paying for what you want, it's important to do some math first. And it's not simply something that I can put on the screen and give you a formula to do. This is something that you're going to have to do on your own to see what your living style is like. So one common mistake that a lot of people make is that they look at how much let's say house, they look at how much the house is going to cost total, and they say, if I put this much of a down payment, then my monthly mortgage is going to be this much. And they say, I can afford to pay that. But you have to actually think there's more into it than that. There's taxes, obviously, but the most important thing that people overlook is maintenance costs. So whenever you look at the total payment, you look at the down payment, and you see what your monthly cost is, also consider what the maintenance cost is and see if you can afford to pay for that as well. So I'll give you a couple of examples. I bought a Range Rover a couple of years ago. It's my dream car. I always wanted a Range Rover since I was extremely young. So I finally went ahead and bought a Range Rover. And what I typically do is I keep one car for mileage. Like I had a Nissan Rogue, and I drove that thing all around the place because it had 22 to 24 miles per gallon. Then I would drive my Range Rover to important meetings, or if I was going to meet up with a business owner, I would drive the Range Rover to there because it was a nicer car. The thing is, the Range Rover only gets like 13 miles per gallon. So I had to make sure before I bought that car that I could afford to pay the premium gas that I'd be paying for this car. I'd also have to pay for when the headlights go out. It's going to be 3 to 5 times as much as it costs to get the Rogue's headlights fixed. So about a month or so ago, my Rogue ended up getting totaled. So I've been driving my Range Rover around every single place that I go. And I own a janitorial company, so I'm doing a lot of meetings and doing a lot of checking up on things. So I drive a lot of miles every day. So when I had my Rogue, I would spend somewhere between $30 and $40 per week with gas. Now I'm paying more like $70 to $100 per week because I have to drive my Range Rover around, and it gets horrible miles per gallon. So that's some of the things that you got to think about before you make purchases. Another example I can think of is my brother bought a house. Before, he lived in a 1-story home with a basement. Now he lives in a 2-story home with a basement. So he's increased his footprint by quite a bit, his living space. So it's even small things that you got to think about, like how many more dollars is he spending on light bulbs? I'm not talking about the electricity bill. I'm talking about just replacing light bulbs in his house. It's quite a bit more expensive, just that part. Then his home is big enough to where it needs 2 heating units. So that means this year, one of the heating units may go out and he has to pay to get that fixed. And next year, the other one may go out and he has to get that fixed. Or maybe both of them will go out in the same year. So he's got 2 expenses where he used to have 1 expense. So those are the type of things that you got to think about when you buy a house. You might be able to put a nice down payment on. You might be able to pay for the mortgage that you see. Maybe it's $1,100 and you say, yeah, I can swing that. But you also got to think about what it's going to cost, the difference in maintenance every week. So the best time to actually buy yourself those nice things that you've always wanted and to reward yourself for all the hard work that you've put in, it's actually after you've exercised a lot of discipline and saved up a lot of money, enough money to where spending that money for that new house or that new car won't even affect your budget at all. So I'll give you an example. I went all these years wanting that Range Rover I was telling you about, and I never bought it because I was always putting money away, saving money, saving money, saving money. Then one year, about 2 years ago or so, my accountant came to me and he said, Jordan, you have to spend $140,000 or something like that before the end of the year, or your tax bill is going to be outrageous. So we bought all kind of things for our businesses, things that could help, like a school bus and all kind of other things that we could use for our businesses. And we still had quite a bit of money left over. So I looked at all the things that we could be using, things that we could be buying to try to help the business out. And I ended up seeing a Range Rover that I really, really liked. And I said, you know, my business could use a new Range Rover. So I bought a Range Rover with that extra money. It didn't affect my finances even a little bit. So I needed to spend that. It actually ended up helping us on the tax side of things. And it didn't affect me in my personal finances at all. So that's when you should be spending money to reward yourself, is whenever you have enough money where you can spend it, whether it's a down payment or buying the whole car like I did, just buying the whole thing outright. Whichever way it is, you need to be able to spend that money and it not affect you at all. Meaning if you have $100,000 in your account and you want to spend $5,000 on a down payment of your car, that makes sense. But if you have $10,000 in your savings account and you buy a new car for $9,500, probably not a good idea. All right, so that's the information I have for you today. As always, I really appreciate you sticking around to the end. Please do take a moment to like and subscribe to videos, because that's going to help us with YouTube algorithms, as I'm sure you've heard on every other video. So thank you once again. I appreciate your time. God bless as always. Peace.